Hey, today I'm going to share with you a lightning talk that I gave at KubeCon Salt Lake City. It wasn't recorded, so this gives me an opportunity to re-record it for my own YouTube channel. How's that sound? So this is a quick dive into Argo CD, sync phases, and waves. Here we go. What are sync phases? Well, they are ordered deployment stages for your Argo CD resources, the things that your Argo CD application is managing. And with sync phases and waves, you can get high-level ordering and low-level, fine-grained ordering to how you deploy things. If a previous phase fails, the next phase is aborted. So everything's working together to make sure that your deployment happens in order the way you intended. The way you can think about this in the simplest terms is deploy one thing, deploy another thing, and then deploy a third thing, all in that order. So there are some predefined sync phases that Argo CD provides for us, and we can queue off those to determine at a high level when things deploy. The first is pre-sync, and the mentality behind pre-sync is that's when you're supposed to push the stuff that comes before the stuff that matters. So you could think of this as like DB seeding, password provisioning, running an open tofu file just to make sure all the infrastructure is in place. That's what you would run in your pre-sync, or at least that's the mentality behind pre-sync. Then there's the sync phase. The sync phase is the stuff that matters, the reason you even have an application definition to begin with, right? Again, these are guidelines. You don't have to adhere to these mentalities for your sync phases, but that's what they had in mind when they provided them. After sync comes post-sync. You can think of this as cleanup or alerting, messaging, hey, your deployment was successful, unless it wasn't, in which case you will get into the sync fail phase. This is the phase that triggers only if the sync phase, again, the stuff that matters, only if the sync phase fails. So what does the YAML look like for annotating your sync phases and waves? Well, the sync phases, it looks like this. You have a job, a deployment, something that you want to run in the pre-sync phase. You're going to annotate it just like you see here. So it's the Argo CD, Argo Project IO hook annotation. And from there, you define which value, which sync phase you want this job to run in, right? So again, a job, something that provisions infrastructure, something that provisions secrets, you would want to run that in the pre-sync. But your deployment, you would want to run in your sync phase. And this is what that looks like. So I mentioned fine-grained control at the beginning. So what did I mean by that? Well, within each sync phase, you have waves. And with waves, each one is represented by an arbitrary integer. So arbitrary meaning you can define your own set of integers in the order in which your sync phase waves happen. They are executed in numerical order, meaning that 0 comes before 1, 1 comes before 2, and so on. And you can add negative numbers. So negative numbers are valid. If you have 0 through 9 already defined and you need something to run at the beginning, drop a -1 on it and it will run before everything else. And then there is a default, of course. So in the YAML we looked at, we didn't specify anything. That would be set as 0. That's the default value, meaning it's going to run at the 0 wave. If you add a 1 to something else, it'll run after the ones that have no annotation. Finally, as you would expect, things in the same wave happen in parallel, like other Argo CD deployments where we don't specify any ordering to them, right? They're all deployed in parallel. Same thing if you do define ordering and they're all in the same sync wave. So what does the YAML look like for adding a wave? Well, it looks like this. So you have your hook that we already went over, but now you can add another annotation, the sync wave. And again, it's a string value of an integer. I added 0 here just for illustration. If you don't add anything, it's 0 by default. Let's say we're deploying an API test job along with our deployment. Well, we would want that to come afterwards. So we would add a 1 as a sync wave, right? And that would make sure it comes after the 0 value or the default value. So an obvious question comes up, why not just use Argo workflows? We're talking the Argo project after all. Well, first of all, you absolutely can just use Argo workflows, right? If that's what you want to do. But sometimes Argo workflows is too big of a solution. It comes with more CRDs and it's a big framework to wrap your head around. There's a lot going on there. So maybe you want to use your existing tools if you're already working with Argo CD to set up order deployments. You can. So there's a demo coming, of course. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the pre-sync, sync, and post-sync phases. And in the pre-sync, I'm going to generate and update a MySQL user's password in a MySQL database. And then I'm going to store that password as a new Kubernetes secret. In the sync phase, I'll deploy my target application. I'll seed the database with test data, and then I'll run API tests against it to make sure that my deployment, in using the new password, is able to function properly, right? It's able to respond to all the API requests as I expect it to. And then after that, I will clean up the old password out of the Kubernetes secrets where it was stored. Let's get to the demo. All right, here we are in Argo CD, and I've got all my resources deployed already in a local kind cluster. So let's take a look at what those resources are. So first, I'm actually going to take you over here to my values.yaml, because this is what everything keys off of, right? This tag right here is what's going to coordinate my secret creation and tagging, right? My secret creation and labeling, so that the deployment actually knows which version of the secret to pick up. It's all going to queue off of this tag. So if I come into my deployment YAML, you can see I've got my secret provisioning job in the pre-sync phase. That's getting the app version so that it knows when it creates a new secret, it'll label that secret with the new tag that's being deployed. They can all stay synchronized with each other, right? The secret, the deployment, everything. Then we have the actual deployment. This is the 2 pods that I'm going to spin up, and they're going to connect with the database using that new password. After they connect with the database, we will have our, where is it? API test job right here. All right. Again, as part of the sync phase, this comes in wave 1, meaning it comes after the deployment. Deployment is in wave 0. This is in wave 1. And then finally at the end, our secrets cleanup job. This is when we clean up any secrets that don't have this current tag applied, right? So in my previous deployment, I have 0.3. In my next deployment, I'm going to deploy 0.4. Anything that doesn't have 0.4 in the secret name will get destroyed. We're using the API, the Kubernetes API, in order to do all this. And now in Lens, you can see I've got my Argo CD sync wave secret 0.3, and that has a username and password for my MySQL user, right? This is what I'm going to key off of to make sure that I'm pulling all the secrets at the end and deleting the ones that don't have the correct image tag. I'm going to make a query against the Kubernetes API, right? And I'm going to say anything with this tag, this label, that doesn't have the tag 0.4, that's going to get deleted. All right, so we'll close this out. And I'll come back into Argo, and I'm just going to force sync because I really don't remember what I set I think it's the default 3 minutes. So we don't want to wait for that. All right. So real fast, everything's going to happen fast. We've got our secret provisioning job going. Okay. So if I come back into Lens, we should see, yep, there's the secret 0.4, right? Now, I didn't run high availability on this application setup. So these pods are getting destroyed, and we're going to stand up 2 new pods as part of this deployment, right? Once those are deleted, now we're going to see, yep, here come the new pods. And once the new pods are done, we have our API test job. Our API test job is going to test our API, and this is not demoware. So those really ran tests. And then finally, you have our secrets cleanup job. So I bet if we come back into Lens, the 0.3 secret will be gone. And it is. So it updated our password in the database, right? Created a new secret, this secret right here, the 0.4, deployed the new pods, right? That are now targeting this secret as opposed to the old one, ran the API test, and got rid of the old secret. How cool is that? Just some things to keep in mind as you're working through this if you decide you want to try it out. First, because earlier stages can prevent later stages from running, there is a possibility that if something breaks, you may never actually finish deploying that application. That can lead to some orphaned resources, things that got deployed earlier on and were supposed to get cleaned up, but didn't. And so what we have to do if we're using this, right, this is a workflow, we have to ensure we're using proper workflow management techniques to clean up things that shouldn't be there and handle any failure cases that might come along. All right, give it a try. This is pretty cool stuff. If you like this video, please feel free to drop a like. If you want to see more videos like it, please consider subscribing. And if there's other things that you want to see that I'm not covering, please let me know. I am taking suggestions. Thanks.